Hello, everybody, and welcome to our new session from BABLE webinars on the European Bauhaus and how to secure fundings with the European Bauhaus program. It's a pleasure to have you here all. Together with me, we have two excellent speakers. So we have Denisa Pevná, International Coordination Lead at Smart Prague, the OICT. And we also have the Dr. Haris Piplas, who is co-directing the Urban Design Planning and Development Department, and Drees Sommer. Thank you, both of you, to be here with us. And of course, we have with us as well our colleague from BABLE, Madalena, who is ensuring that all the logistics is going smoothly. And yeah, without further ado, I want to welcome you all. We're going to discuss several approaches on how to secure fundings with the European Bauhaus principle or initiative. First of all, we're going to talk about some innovative methodologies, on ensuring the design of livable neighborhoods. We're going to share some practicalities, technologies, and ideas on how to get involved into the European Bauhaus principles when designing livable streets and neighborhoods. We're going to also get inspired by case studies, particularly by the one of Prague, on how their innovation team, the European Bauhaus innovation team, is taking step forwards to implement measures to make our streets more livable again. Finally, we're going to have a moment also to discuss about those initiatives, funding initiatives that are available and will be available also from European sources to fund solutions, activities, and pilots under the European Bauhaus principles for both enhancement of the economical fabric, but also education, creation of better street furniture, for example, for more inclusivity as well. And yeah, we are going to share it with you and make it available for you at the end of the presentation as well. Before jumping into the presentation of our speakers, I would like to briefly give you some ideas that we have been working from BABLE. BABLE is an accelerator of urban innovation in Europe, in case that you don't know us already. That we support cities on their path to the innovation activities on different fields. So waste, mobility, energy, and then the European Bauhaus and the space design as well. I'm going to just share with you very briefly to take out the time for our speakers today on how the space and the urban design conditions the way that we move in the city, right? Maybe among you, some of you are familiarized with this map. It's a sort of metro map, but instead of stations, what we represent by points are squares, are points of interest in a city. And the lines represent the time in minutes that we spend going from point A to point B. This is the first one of this kind in Spain. It is made by Pontevedra in the north part of Spain, the region of Galicia, and it represents clearly the distance by meters from one point to another. Apart from the meters, we also see the minutes. So we can see, for example, for 500 meters, we see 5 minutes, 800 meters, 9 minutes, which are normally taken under a ratio of, between 4 and 5 kilometers per hour distance, right? I wanted to share with you some let's say, non-metrical ideas that we came to mind when we go deeper into these areas, right, and these connections. So let's focus, for example, in these two lines that you see here. Both are written that can be taken in 9 minutes walking, right? And let's go a little bit deeper on what we have inside, right? So this one, for example, from the city center of Pontevedra, this main square, until a nearby roundabout, looks like that. So it's the Rua Peregrina in the city, and the other looks like that. So despite the distance looks similar, right? So 9 minutes walking average between one another. For most of us, the perception of the distance that we are walking in both of them is clearly different. So for the one in my left, with a very green area, very livable area, distance seems to be reduced when we walk through that because the ambience is more appealing. While, for example, in a place where probably we have very little shadow with poor accessibility, noise, the perception of distance increase. So we want to further develop a little bit the debate on the 50-minute city. Should we always be centered from the actor city or from the actor person? So if we focus on the actor person, we may see that some parameters such as the wind, the slopes, how safe is the roads, how many lights there are there, is a noisy street. Or in the opposite side, are we walking in a very pleasant streets with a green view index, for example, with facilities? The way that the space conditions us as humans motivates us to move towards one street or another to reach our destination, right? And this type of analysis helps us identifying, on the one side, gaps for urban improvement, but also identify how the service can be better located in a most efficient way, taking into account not only the metric system, but how we perceive the distance, right? So, for example, there are the several studies. I like this one in particular from Andres Sevcuk from the MIT, in which it has been analyzed on how a set of parameters, such as how many turns, uphills, the presence of public art. I would like to raise this topic also later on. The traffic volume, for example, conditions the preference of road in a larger or smaller scale, right? We wanted also to make, in our case, cross-analysis with some different variables, probably not all of them, but also different one, and see how a certain city would be defined by how likely is to be walked, right? So the walkability index, taking into account conditions like the green view index, how many trees are there in the city, is there any rivers around that also generate psychologically pleasant feeling, is there wind, noise, slopes, for example, how vibrant is the area, and a sort of 12 parameters that creates what we call the impedance to the walkability map, or impedance to the walking map. It's a map with some coefficient issued from the mixture of all these independent analysis, right? That tells us at what extent the city is more walkable or less walkable. So when we make the very simple analysis on the catchment area that every map you may know has, when we calculate how many areas are within a 15 minutes distance, in this case, just to not to make it more very complicated, we put 5 minutes only. We can see clearly a difference between what is the real distance and the perceived distance. That can be increased or reduced according to how pleasant is the city and its design for us. And this is only based on the parameters for a let's say a common perception of the city, not taking into account a much more variables that defines a person from disabilities, age, or also gender. Gender affects very much. I mean, the gender is very influenced. The space is very influenced on how men or woman perceives this. So, for example, a test made in London reflect how men are mostly looking at the end of the road in a certain street or stairs, for example, where women are more looking to the sides, right? So this is what we see here in these spots made in some tests, which indicates that the parameter of lights, for example, is more important in some genders to the others. So there is a lot of research and analysis still to be done and to perform to create more livable streets for all. And with this short presentation, I want to give the word to our first guest, Haris Piplas, who is going to explain us how the NEB Lab is being shaped to create more livable and integrated neighborhoods. Hello, Haris.
Hello, good morning, Breo. I hope everyone can hear and see me. Thank you for the kind invitation. It's always a pleasure to work with BABLE. Of course, there's a strategic partnership, but that connects our offices. But I'd say what you presented was a great overview on many of the topics on social, ecological, but also economic sustainability of cities that you work and we work on, and we work, of course, together. And glad to dive in more into the ecosystem of the European Bauhaus and our lab that we share together, and see how this can be helpful for accelerating existing projects and also working on new projects together. So if you let me to share my screen, I will just do that now. And also, of course, been looking forward to hear what innovations happen in Prague. Been also active in the city, and glad just also to dive in later into this urban laboratory. And we will talk about neighborhoods today. So the neighborhoods are the main cell of human life and work. So that's why the whole hype around the 15-minute city or 5 or 10-minute city, the spaces between buildings. We all remember Jan Gehl's books. So the neighborhood has been neglected for many years in urban planning and development. We have been looking into large. I see somebody's writing that he cannot hear me. Can you give me a signal, Breo, if you can hear me?
I too can hear you, Madalena also, but we are concerned if the rest of the audience cannot hear. Okay, we probably one or two people did have problems with the audios, so please check the connection. Thank you, Haris.
No worries. So I'll even speak a bit louder so that with every audio setting you can hear me, and because I'm really looking forward to your feedback and the discussion later that comes. So basically, the neighborhood has been neglected for many years. Even though the main cell of human life is happening on this scale, the scale that we can perceive, that we can walk. And that's why, which you can see on this slide, we have been working, especially in the 20th century, in the car-oriented, fragmented modernist planning, where we divided different zones of working, recreation, retail, housing, etc., from each other, and then connected them with the large-scale avenues that also added to the pollution and the CO2 emission in our cities. So now we do have to defragment the city. We have to work in integrated solutions. We have to work on ideas of future life. Yes, we have to think about streets and infrastructure and energy, but we have to not forget the social and spatial issues. And in this sense, also think about the human-oriented design to enable this vision of the new city. So we do have still to work on what the vision of the 21st century could be. And now we'll come later to the Bauhaus and how is this connected to it. Very important is that we work in combining different competences on the future city. So we do need to work on mobility, water, climate, identity, the social issues, energy in simultaneously synchronous ways. And we also have to combine, intertwine these competences. If you look around Europe, it's not the lack of architects, designers, planners, artists, even, or economists. It's the way how we forget to put these different bits and pieces together. If I may say, be provocatively, we became a bit the victims of our own success in this part of the world, at least talking about Europe, where we were have this position that we can be specialists and we can really dive into these silos, but this created a fragmented city. So in this sense, we have to go back to putting these different mosaic pieces together, not in a generic way. We saw in the 20th century these urban schemes that have been rolled out across Eastern and Western Europe, they can be replicated. We have to work site-specifically, context-specifically, and of course, user and human-centric. And in this sense, ask these critical questions, especially about potentials, restrictions. What does which location offer? What are the, maybe it's a new building that we have to think about. We have to first uncover the underlying potentials, the latent potentials that are social and economic in our cities in order to create an attractive space. And in this sense, also a final statement on this slide, not divide or play the rational technical concept. And we need that. We have to work on the economic, but also the engineering viability and feasibility of our cities and projects. We just can't be drawing visions. It has to be implementable. It has to cover interests of very different stakeholders across political realms, across societal realms. We have to create a city where we work and live together. And in this sense, this emotional, inspiring, atmospheric must go together with a rational, technical, and consequent. And those are many projects I could dive into. Just as an example of a brownfield or former industrial derelict area in a European city. In this sense, it's a Swiss city at the north of Zurich, where we dove in and look into the spatial characteristics. Some of these the statements are in German, but we really looked in what, even in this derelict, and if you want a non-attractive site, what potentials are there? What talents, as we call them in German, Begabungen? So to uncover the industrial heritage, to uncover the creeks, the water streams that have been covered for decades with infrastructure, to look into what's in the surrounding area, how to connect these. You see in the south here, on the bottom, the more urban forest areas, and then the urban agriculture in the north. How this can be also mobilized and cross-connected. So that's just to exemplify to you how we start with an analysis and then go into the more concrete transformation of places, which you see on the right-hand side. The topics in the middle that we are thinking about, a sponge city, how to reconnect different areas. But of course, we have to build housing and we have to build spaces of modern working. And then the topic of the Bauhaus, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, came up when we were a bit, I say, if I look across the architecture and design circles, quite skeptical. So why does the European Commission, a top-down perceived initiative, why do they recycle this holy, if you want, term of the Bauhaus, which started as a bottom-up art and craft and architecture school in Germany after the First World War, right? Where Europe needed a recovery, needed definitely a new vision back then. And in this sense, we found it quite intriguing that Europe is trying now to 100 years after the Great War. We are, of course, standing in front of new challenges that in 2019 haven't been that much. We're thinking about security or geopolitics, which we have been reminded of in the last years. But we have been thinking of how we can reinvent our cities. And if you see on the left-hand side, those are Le Corbusier's plans for Paris, quite, I'd say, one of these modernist paradigms that to remove the majority of the old town in Paris and replace it with these large towers. I'd say many of these visions have been implemented, maybe not in the center of Paris, but the outskirts of Paris, if you go to Saint-Denis, etc. So we realize, okay, now 100 years after, maybe this was not the right vision, or maybe we misinterpreted the modernist city, but now we have to go to work in a more balanced, if you want, innovation ecosystem way. So we have now to rather have top-down planning. We need to work in an ecosystem way. And this is what the European Bauhaus actually has brought strongly on the political agenda in Europe. And of course, that Breo, you will talk about that more in detail. BABLE is one of the, I'd say, most active instances in not only fundraising, but also in urban innovation. It was interesting that it wasn't just a vision, but also it became also a funding program, and it became a years-long program also here with a full political dedication. Finally, I would say finally a moment where us as designers, planners, researchers, artists have been also invited to contribute to to urban innovation or the implementation of the Green Deal. So we have been finally, for many years, being neglected, if you want, or also complaining that our voice is not heard. Now, finally, our voice is being asked by the highest instances of this continent. And then and glad to reflect that more in the question and answers, the European Bauhaus toolbox, the compass that leads or that lays foundation for participatory, sustainable, and beautiful approaches within the Bauhaus have been developed, and for that. And then this is where we also started our interaction within European Bauhaus as Drees Sommer, together with BABLE, with ICLE Europe, the DGMB, the German Sustainable Building Council, and others, to look more into the neighborhood scale and to look more into inclusivity and sustainability, as this element was already mentioned in the Bauhaus, but it was a bit, I'd say, there was still space to improve and still space, and this is why we got active as friends of the European Bauhaus officially, and then as a lab. The European Bauhaus Lab is nothing else than a thematic cluster within the European Bauhaus. This is a current moment where we have the pleasure to work together and work on acceleration of existing and also acquisition of new projects. I'll come to that now in the final part of my presentation. So that's how it looks like. We have been launching it last year. This is the fair in Berlin, organized by us and also BABLE. This is, as you see down, the Smart City Expo Barcelona, where we officially launched our lab. So the lab now exists with these partners. So we were proud of our partnerships that in this context with these 5 organizations that teamed up to work with very different also competences and in perspectives, team up to work on inclusivity and sustainability of neighborhoods. And maybe to close my presentation with a couple of pilot projects or pilot workshops that have been executing in this context, looking and supporting cities, but also supporting private or semi-private protagonists in urban transformation. You see, climate issues are not just something that happens in Dhaka, or it happens in Venice, and it happens in some places with all the dramatic outcomes also in Basel. So you see here the floodings of the Rhine River on the left-hand side, bottom of the mighty Rhine River. You see also one of the public fountains in Basel here on the right bottom side. So the number of heat days tripled since 1980 in Basel. So if you talk about urban heat island effect, that's a city that's highly affected. And interestingly enough, also a city, if you want, you see on the upper part of the image is a realization that it's a city that is lying in 3 countries, right? So the agglomeration of Basel is located in Germany and Switzerland and France. So how you plan a metropolitan area that's located in 3 countries. So it was another challenge. So we've been invited here by the city government to work in the complex context of the stakeholders. You see here on the left-hand side, those are the stakeholders from Basel, but also the surrounding communities in France and Germany. If you know, Basel is also not famous for its pharma industry. So you have these large pharma giants who moved out the city 2 or 3 years ago after 150 or 60 years of production of pharma and chemicals. So a lot of contamination and new, I'd say, for almost forbidden cities that have to be reintegrated into the rest of the city. So quite some interesting but also exciting challenges that have been exposed to. Here, this gentleman here on the picture on the right, this is Luca Zott. This is the head of the urban development department. And also here you see colleagues from Barcelona, etc. So we also try to bring in international expertise and also start not just a generic city-to-city discussion, but also have different cities working with cities on the transformation of real spaces. And finally, you see here how you can participate. What is the added value? We offer collaboration opportunities, an ecosystem of partners. So it's our organization that exhibited and mentioned, but also many others. We also can offer your visibility and, of course, expertise. Let's say a giant pool of experts that we have within our lab. and also not direct access to funds, but of course we are looking for partners for future applications for Horizon and other programs driving urban transition. So there are many opportunities in this context. And if you're interested, you can get back to us. You see my address and address of Alex from BABLE if you want to join us as a project, but also as a committed network partner. Is it an innovator, university, service provider to join us, organize these workshop events, but also dive into the real project work together. With that, give back the word to Breo and looking forward to the conversations later.
Thank you so much, Haris. It's a real pleasure to see this NEB Lab taking life and creating impact. So talking about impact, let's see how these solutions are being applied in cities from the city perspective itself. Denisa, you're here with us. I'm sharing the screen again. And please, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Breo, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me as a speaker here. And very interesting insights from Haris, actually. So now I will try to follow up with the new European Bauhaus insights from the city of Prague. And what I will present is the NEB innovation team that we established in a city. So next slide, please. Thanks. Yeah, so actually the situation in Prague, like before, let's say 3 or 4 years between the institutions and universities and so on, was not really the best in terms of cooperation, because actually the city of Prague is very fragmented in terms of districts. You can see the illustration map here in the slide, and also it's very fragmented in terms of organization. So we have many city organizations that often focus on the similar topics. So actually their work overlap very often. So actually they used to compete a lot for funds or responsibilities, or they were not really actually willing to cooperate. And it used to be the practice in Prague before several years, and when actually the topic of New European Bauhaus came to the city, we decided, okay, it's a great chance to try to change this, at least in one topic. So actually in 2022, the topic of New European Bauhaus came to Prague because us, OICT, one of the city companies, and one university research center, we got together one Horizon project that was about promoting the NEB values in the connected city. The name of the project is CRAFT, Creating Actionable Future, and so because of that, the topic of New European Bauhaus came to the city. So next slide, please. Yeah, so we thought, since it's a really new thing for everyone, for every institution, nobody ever worked with it, nobody has experienced it, let's try to create, we call it NEB innovation team. Let's create a NEB team where we can cooperate with all relevant institutions that would like to do something with the topic of New European Bauhaus. So what we did was actually quite simple. We just tried to call everyone that we know from different institutions or organizations that we thought they might be interested. So, for example, Institute of Planning and Development, or University of Fine Arts, or some departments from the City Hall, and we just invited everyone to one table. To discuss actually what the topic of New European Bauhaus mean for them and what they would like to do within this topic. And actually important part, or that's why one of the reasons why we think that this team actually works well is that the members are not from the management level of the institutions, but members are like project managers or people who really work with the topic on everyday base. So they are really like in the topic in their everyday work, not like far on the management level, let's say. And we also decided to organize the team in a very democratic way. So we thought, the idea was that there is no like management organization, but there will be a responsibility in sharing the ownership of the team. And that also worked quite well, because everybody really felt like being member of the team and not just like one of the participants, and that someone else will always organize the meeting and will always take care about the team that is going to continue and so on. The hosting of the meetings that are more or less like 4 times per year. So the hosting also rotate through the different institutions. So every time all the members visit the venue of one institute, that is also quite interesting, and I would say quite bonding for the members. And so maybe next slide, please. Can I ask you for? Yeah, great. Sorry, maybe there's some little delay. Great. So actually the impact of the team is that, and this is actually the biggest impact, that really the institutions started to cooperate together. And we think that is because it's really on the personal connection and on the personal level, that during the team now runs actually for 3 years. So during that time, we really got to know the members. We communicate and meet on a really friendly and personal way. And so actually it really got the cooperation of the institutions way better, even in other topics, not just in the European Bauhaus, because we created kind of a bonded group of people across the city. So now when we need to contact other institution, we can always call this person from the innovation team, and then it's always better to get into the institution for someone who you already know. And within these 3 years, we actually organize also many events in Prague together, or we are helping when other institutes organize some event and we are always promoting the idea of new European Bauhaus there. And besides that, we also organize a NEB site festival in Prague to the one main one in Brussels that take place in the spring. And the great outcome also is that the project Craft, under which this innovation team started and was also funded, actually already ended 1 month ago. But the team was very successful, and everybody would like to continue meeting within the team. So it's going to continue beyond the project. And actually, we are really happy for this, because we know that sometimes when the funding from European projects are gone, it's hard to keep the things running. So we are really glad that the team will continue. And what's more, it was actually an inspiration for establishing innovation teams also for other topics. So now actually innovation team for energy and environment are starting in a city. So that's great. So if I should say maybe like the main message that comes from experiences with the NEB innovation team is really try to cooperate on a personal level with people from institutions, universities, wherever, because then the personal connection is really making the difference. I know it may sound actually very simple. I was also surprised like a few years ago when I started to work in this field, like how is it possible that the institutions are not cooperating, because they actually have the same goals. And so I think maybe it's the same situation in many other cities. So it's with a new topic, it's actually a great opportunity to change it. Yeah, and by that I am giving the word back to Breo.
Thank you so much, Denisa. Thank you so much. I really like the presentation. So it's also very nice, right? The European Bauhaus is trying to make cities more humans, but ourselves, we also need to be more humans when we interconnect with different departments, different institutions to break silos, right? So that's a great message to be human in a transversal way. We're going to have the next 20 minutes, more or less, to have a little bit of discussion, the three of us, on what does it take to design more inclusive, attractive, and sustainable neighborhoods in our cities, right? And for this, and actually as the last part of our conversation was more about integrating the different perspectives, how to cooperate with the multidisciplinary teams as well, I wanted to bring, very aligned with the European Bauhaus principles, that probably is the key factor that differentiates from other initiatives, the part regarding the beauty or the aesthetics or the art, right? And I would like to ask you both, Denisa and Haris, how is your experience and recommendations, perspective on how to integrate the artist community in the design process, right? In both the co-creation, the design as well, for different scales. So for the permanent building, so how to integrate the approach in the design, the permanent design, also for tactical urbanism. But also I'm very interesting, you mentioned also, Denisa, the NEB Festival, how to integrate also the artist community in ephemeral activities that brings our streets alive, right? In a recurrent base. Don't know if I should point out somebody or any among you has a clear idea on how to start.
I can start.
Great.
Glad to add, yeah.
It's a very good question. Actually, we are just tackling this topic nowadays very often. And actually, what we believe is that we should really invite artists to work on the projects from the beginning of when the projects are being created, actually, because our company, or the company where I work, we actually do smart city projects for the city of Prague. And besides that, we have an open source data platform where we collect a lot of data from the city, from environment, from waste management, of course, from traffic and so on. And in the long term, actually, we really struggle with presenting the data to the public, and especially presenting why the data are important, why it's important to collect and analyze the data, and what it actually can tell us. Because in general, when you show people some numbers or statistics, okay, it's maybe interested for people who are like educated in this field or really understand what it's saying. But for most of the people, it's just kind of numbers. And now it's the point when art can help us a lot, because we believe that actually art can really evoke feelings in a people. So we believe that when we're gonna present these numbers or statistics or the data in more art way, then it's gonna evoke feelings in the people, so they have some strong impression out of it, and maybe they will start to be interested in the data and would like to know more about it, like what could be the impact and so on. So because of that, we also invited two artists to help us with this, and we created it's a kind of a tool or piece of art that we call Prague Pixels. Maybe if I can share a screen, I can just show like pictures of that art, so it's way easier to understand it. Yeah, now you should see a presentation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just wanted to show this. So actually, we created this like LED panels that can show different data sets. So, for example, we used to show data from the microclimate sensors that measures humidity and temperature in a city. And so the idea is actually to show the heat islands and cold oases in a city using different numbers. So the colder the area is, then the color is blue or green, and hotter it is, it's actually yellow or red. So in the panel could be like a map of the city of Prague, and so you'll see like different locations that are more like urban areas, like completely red, and then other areas that are like more greenery, that are like way more green or blue colors. So you can really like feel the difference. And well, especially with the last days, actually, that was the heat wave in whole Europe. Like this is something I think very, very important now. Stop sharing. Yeah.
Important for awareness.
Yes, important for awareness, and of course, like for the future urban planning of the cities.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, I think that's, if I may add, I think it's exactly the way how to concretely add the voice of artists. And this is I think it's a quite wide description of who can be considered an artist. I remember in a quite a challenging city of Sarajevo. This was already 10-ish years ago. So if I may also share the screen, it was very important. You can look at the Ukraine now. Most large, also international projects are being on hold, right? So we are waiting for this perfect geopolitical and security moment, and many current projects are on hold. So you can imagine how difficult it is. We talk about now 2040, right? The climate neutrality, net zero. We have 2030, 2040, 2050. How difficult it is to imagine the future if you live in this unstable context in parts of Europe where you can barely think of tomorrow or next week rather than 2050, 2040. So I think in this context, it's very important to have artists and visionaries being involved in projects. And this was in Sarajevo 10 years ago. Now it's 30 years after the war. Back then it was 20 years after the war. It was very difficult to bring artists, photographers, to talk about phenomena in other cities around the globe, right? To cross-compare, to see, not to compare in terms of who's doing better or who's doing worse, but just to contextualize. Because if you work in different cities and in different continents, and just stripe away all the stereotypes, we look into very similar challenges. And it is climate challenges. There is, I'd say, demands of the local population for more green space and life quality. It's quite universal. So artists can help us to contextualize or to cross-compare in a more provocative way, if you want, in a more playful way. And this was for us here showing this exhibition. You see, it's a guerrilla exhibition assembled in 3 days to show this kind of
avoiding the
avoiding the hydrant. So in this sense, how artists or kind of landscape artists work with some inconsistencies in public space, let's say, and then to look into also culture and identity and how different, I'd say, elements play out in different cities around the world. So this is in this kind of, if you want, improvised exhibitions with also famous photographers and art. It helped to contextualize a bit the urban discourse, and it's very important also to bring artists in a more, I'd say, in a more active way. So you see here these city labs or these discussion rounds or whatever you want to call them. And it was very important for us also to invite comedy artists or also here to because they dare to question the reality. That's very difficult. For example, to there's many even NGOs who are very close to the governmental sector, which is completely normal and fine. But then they lose this kind of critical touch because their funding depends on the government sector. Those are phenomena around the world. And in this sense, if you invite these comedy artists who contextualize, this is the Bosnian Monty Python actor, to contextualize the role of the designer and architect. In the background, you see this is a young artist who's painting the vision of the future city live as we speak. So in this sense, it was quite, I'd say, quite interesting to see how art and artists can contribute to this discourse, to the dialogues, to the discussions, and make them, I'd say, more vivid and more livable and also more, I'd say, more real.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, the communication is key when we want to introduce actors to the scene, for sure, and it's key also that the creativity remains stable, right? So there is no biases between interest and not just complete a check in our checklist, right? So we mentioned targets. So we mentioned 2030, 2040, 2050. We mentioned the urgency of bringing our cities, our countries, our world into a much more carbon neutral one for our subsistence and livable spaces as well. We also mentioned how to show key indicators such as the heat and urban heat islands, right? This phenomena that is multiplying the effect of the global warming already in cities. And which role do you think, Denisa and Haris, that urban intervention and urban design through furniture, through education, creation of green areas, for example, has nowadays, and especially with the umbrella of the European Bauhaus, to tackle the urban heat islands phenomena and especially the negative effects? And I'm mostly curious about the energy poverty, so how the urban heat islands affect ones more than others, right? In terms of poverty and location, and also the active mobility, how this is also a condition on how do we move in cities.
You want to start, Denisa? Then glad to add, or should I start then?
Feel free to start. I can then follow.
No, I mean that's another very interesting topic, Breo. We're all visual people. If I remember just one project while listening to you, this is in Mannheim. This is a 200 kilometers just downstream the Rhine, right? So quite similar, I'd say, challenge, if you want. I mean, you have invasive plant species. You have invasive now also animal species. So quite, these cities around rivers who are also a bit laying down the valley, they experience, at least in this part of Europe, quite some challenges. And we realize in Mannheim that the mapping or understanding where does flooding and urban heat island happen, it has been done. But what hasn't been done is where are also vulnerable populations located, mostly the elderly, the youth population, but also people with illnesses. There's different definitions who counts as vulnerable population. We realize these two levels of information haven't been overlapped. Because there's, of course, different departments that deal with social issues, and there's different departments that deal with technical infrastructure issues. So this overlap, where's the location of the vulnerable population, and where is the as you see here, where is the location of the heat islands heavily overlapped. So what you see here, it's in German, it's schools and kindergartens where there's location in terms of temperatures at 10 p.m. on a summer day during heat days. So you see quite some overlaps, and in this sense, the interpretation of this information overlap helped us and of course the city to develop guidelines and to develop also measures to fight and to combat these negative, I'd say, aspects that come with it. So if somebody's interested, you look into Smartillions Mannheim. This was a project funded by the German government that we have been participating. So again, it's just a simple mapping, or if you want, developing measures helps to tackle the social issues, but also the climate issues at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really great.
Before giving the word to Denisa, I just want to remind or to inform, if in case I didn't say, that here the audience, in case you want to ask questions, feel free to write it down, and I will tell them afterwards. And please, Denisa, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting. Yeah, that was actually a great example from Mannheim. I really like the visualization of the data. Yeah, so that brings me kind of to what I wanted to say, and it's that for measuring the impact, we actually need the data, and that's, I think, something where we have to start if we want to monitor the impact or measure the impact and so on. So we need to have many sensors, many data from the cities, because what we can actually see in the last years, for example, is that there is a big problem in the very high temperature in the cities during the nights. So like when we compare the temperature during the day in the cities, of course, it's like higher than, let's say, outside of the cities, like saying very simply. But then when we compare the temperatures in a night, we can see that the areas outside of the city, or in like the big green areas, let's say, during the night, it can get like way colder. But in a city areas like with no blue-green infrastructure, the temperature really stay like very high, and that's what is actually a big problem in the cities. And so, we have to do something with that. And it's a question for the policymakers and so on. But what we see very clearly is that the blue-green infrastructure really cool the cities down.
That's very true. Just a word to that. So exactly. I mean, you have to then derive measures that can be green infrastructure corridors or cold wind streams that have to be understood. But for that, you need to understand the ecology of a city, which is not easy nowadays, because we have been sealing and building so much that the original ecologies, the original water streams, the original wind streams have been forgotten. So it's also not always not easy to uncover them. But you're completely right, Denisa. We realize there's a 10 degree difference between the suburbs and the inner city at 10 p.m. on a summer day. So that's quite dramatic. And there are many other, there's a lot of data, for example, that where the companies react quite critically. We realize that, for example, in summer days, there is 25 to 30% the decrease of working productivity in these days. So in this sense, I'd say there's a strong also economic aspect to it. If we don't enable good working conditions and good, I'd say, conditions in our cities, there's health issues, but also working productivity. So there is the private and the public and other sectors that have to deal with that. So again, I feel that the whole entire Bauhaus ecosystem helped us to position these topics, to bring them on the forefront, especially with the city governments, etc. So I think, therefore, the NEB as you call it, a movement that developed throughout the last years and developed, I'd say, in a very interesting way, helped that these topics. We know about climate change for decades, but they were not political priorities. Now they are, and I think now we have the moment to act.
Indeed. That's our mission. We have a question from the audience. This is Jose Moreno, who asks, in the framework of the city design, what level of importance do you give to both smart water design and also the creation of GIS, Geographic Information System?
For whom is the question?
Jose Moreno from the audience.
To whom? To
well, there is no specific person address, but whoever feels more comfortable to reply. Maybe you three, all of us. Well, from the GIS, I may reply to this one. The GIS allows city designers, city planners, I mean, it's holistic. So every type of person, professional working in the creation, analysis, and diagnostic of a spatial area, of obtaining a very diverse set of data to understand the landscape, to understand the territory, right? So with this data, that can be population, as we showed before, temperature, we can easily cross. We can see how many, for example, inhabitants of more than 60 years old are in less than 50 minutes walking from a certain location. So we could create some road maps on how to address special needs by location, right? So to my regard, the GIS plays a fundamental role when trying to analyze the city or the region, and especially when trying to create a more democratic way of living for all of us, combining also housing, transport, I mean, all the factors that needs to be combined to create a complete city. Maybe for the smart water design, it's not my topic, but probably anyone among you, Denisa, probably, have you spoke before about water systems?
No, it's not really our topic neither, actually. Well, but maybe back to the GIS, I completely agree with you, Breo. And well, in Prague, we have actually Institute for Planning and Development, like city-owned company that cares about the urban development of the city. And I know they that's one of the most important measures or tools they use. But I would say the problem in Prague is that this institute can only make an influence to development projects that are made on a land that is owned by the city or by the city districts. But unfortunately, there are really big areas owned by the private developers, and they don't, some of them, it's not the same for everyone, of course, but the problem is that some of the developers are really not taking in account any of these measures, let's say, and they just build apartments or building that later rent to companies and so on, and they don't really take care about the infrastructure at all, let's say. So of course, then the neighborhooding districts are under big pressure because they need to build even more infrastructure because of that, and that's kind of like a issue we are dealing with a bit.
Great. Thank you so much. So we are barely at the end of our presentation. I will jump back to the last part of the webinar, which is the funding, and then probably we can also prepare a conclusion sentence, the three of us. I will show you now a set of 13 available EU funding opportunities that are available through the funding and tender portals on the European Commission website. Those are two based on the live with the deadline 23 of September. Two calls of, as you may see here, 3 to 4 projects for 8 million and 34 projects for 2 million on the live framework that aims both at supporting the urban green transition by funding local authorities to adopt integrated cross-sectoral solutions, and also to create standard action projects for improving environmental quality across European Union cities and regions. These two lives are quite important. I mean, quite important in terms of funding amount, and it's a good opportunity to jump into them. We have also this year up to 11 Horizon Europe calls that will close by mid-November that are seeking on creating more beautiful, inclusive and sustainable transformation for neighborhoods on 3 different approaches: participation, regeneration and business, each one of them with different approaches. So for the participation, the idea is to focus on how inclusion and local democracy can be integrated and connected to the green transformation. We have also the regeneration for the circular and regenerative, I need to practice more this word, approach for the built environment. And also a set of 3 calls more focused on how to work on new business models for the full transformation of neighborhood, for the local commerce, for the bottom-up social entrepreneurship, for example, how to renovate the built environment. We have a set of 11 calls in totals that will be shared with you together with the link to the video. I saw some questions already about if this webinar will be recorded. Yes, it will be recorded. It will be sent to you by email, and also the PowerPoint in PDF format. So due to the time, I'm not going to go and jump into each one of them, but I will invite you to reach us. We have a full scalable model of accompanying cities and companies and academias on how to jump into Horizon Europe projects, Interreg projects, and in particular, European Bauhaus or oriented projects. So I would like to invite you to continue individual discussions with our team, and well, with me in particular, and directly book a meeting with me following this link here, or just taking a quick screenshot to the screen, or just scan the QR code, and we can further discuss in a 20-minute call on how each one of the previous calls here shown or any other alike could be interesting for creating consortia and furthering collaborations. Without further ado, and before finish our presentation, I will just I always like to do this at the end of our webinars, just to conclude each one of us with a quick sentence or ideas on what has been for you the main insights of the discussion today, and also recommendations that you would like to give to the cities. Denisa, Harris, and everybody here present. I would say from our conversation today, creating a human city is above all creating a human methodology, right? So including every one of us in the process. We discussed this before. Denisa brought it into the panel. Integrate all aspects from the city. So from both the ones who design and co-design the city, but the one who use the city as well, right? We should not forget at the end, the citizens are the end users of the product or service, which is the city itself, right? So we must ensure that they are able to use it, to enjoy it, to be able to work on that, to not to rely on or the ownership of a car, for example, to reach from one place to another. We own this democratization of the cities to the people and to the citizens that live, work, and play in that. So that would be my sentence. Anyone here? Haris, Denisa?
So Haris, do you want to go first?
Please go ahead, Denise.
Okay. Well, maybe I will go back to the artist. That was also part of our discussion earlier, that it's, well, I think we can see that really include artists like to the process of creating the project since the beginning is really, really crucial, because the artists can really make the, I don't know, invisible phenomenon visible, and really make the project, let's say, really bring like life to the project, and so the project can kind of speak to the people itself. So my advice would be, or suggestion would be, like, really don't be worried to bring the artists to the process.
Nice
session, and thanks again for the invitation. I'd say maybe what I said in my last statement, we know, and as a society, and we have scientific evidence that we do have ecologic and climate challenges. There is also a certain political, let's talk about it as well, the political, I'd say, shifts in Europe, around the world. It's happening, and it's clear that a more livable city creates a more comfortable and a more, I'd say, fulfilled lifestyle if a city is secure and it's safe and it's green. So what we do here is not just an urban transformation or designing, it's a societal transformation. And I believe that the Bauhaus is finally the platform that was needed for many decades to gather all of us. And there are opportunities that are not easy. All those projects are innovative or pioneering. So there are a few links. Also, Borut, who I agreed here, also added a few links. Also, Breo, you mentioned programs. So it's not easy to acquire these programs and get into the projects. But I think now we have to work together on the implementation. We know that about the challenges and implementation in this multi-competence and multidisciplinary way. And I very much look forward to future applications, collaborations, and synergies. So feel free to reach out and to continue on some other occasion. Thank you again, Breo and Denisa, for this conversation.
Thanks to you for being here today, and thanks to the audience also for the very interesting questions and for their support as well. I see that some of them are expressing their happiness with the event today. So thank you all, and have a nice day.